candidates are up here from left to right. Eric Melillo, the Conservatives. John Hobbs, Green Party. Bryce, I call it Desjardins, but it's wrong, Desjardins.
Oh, that's good.
That's him, he's a People's Party. Tanya Cameron, New Democratic Party, NDP. And Kelvin Boucher Chicago, who is an independent candidate. So we're going to start with 3 minutes for each of them to make an opening remark. After that, we've got your questions in the bucket, and I'm going to draw them. And we'll let them have 2 minutes apiece to answer the questions. And when we get closer to 8:30, they're going to have 3 minutes to wind things up, 3 minutes apiece to wind things up. So I think we're ready to go. Alex, I think we're ready to go.
I'm just thinking, if anybody still wants to ask a question, come and get a piece of paper, a pen, and we'll drop it in later, right?
Yep. I've got the questions. I will be drawing names. That'll determine the order that people are going to speak in. And Charles Fox from the Liberal Party is not here tonight, and he has given me his opening presentation to read on his behalf. So I'll be doing that whenever I draw his name to do that. So the first presenter tonight will be following this will be nice. Good evening. I can't be here in person. I'm grateful. Charles was born in Sioux Lookout later in life in the community. Charles knows in the staggering 60 square kilometers. He traveled. He's been to nearly every municipality and community. This committee election has an underlying mission witness as the proposed independence by Donald Trump. Clear that every poll is a contest between our liberal Prime Minister Carney and conservative Poilievre. Like Mark Carney, having education, communities, Ontario Region and Chief to represent all of the 133 First Nation communities throughout Ontario. United people to tackle issues about mental health, their economic development. Charles will use his bridge building skills to enhance the economic and social development and potential of the area's youth and engage them as never before in local decision making. Building stronger relationships between the riding's municipal leaders, First Nation chiefs, and the business community is a key aspect of Charles' intended approach. Charles is committed to working with all levels of government to transition to permanent, climate-resilient infrastructure. This vision is in line with the Liberal Party's goal of investing in green infrastructure to create sustainable jobs while addressing pressing climate challenges. Housing, road infrastructure, as well as facilities that support healthcare services and community recreation are noteworthy priorities for Charles and the region. He believes that collaboration and respect is vital, creating a future founded on equity and shared prosperity as research development issues are concerned, leading to the implementation of mutually beneficial agreements. The Liberal Party stands with Charles in championing reconciliation and self-determination for Indigenous peoples. A re-elected Carney Liberal government will continue to support Indigenous-led initiatives, resolve land claims more swiftly, and invest in healthcare. As a residential school survivor, Charles will call out those, including candidates. Thank you. Bryce, you can stay there. There's 2 microphones you'll have to share with each other.
Okay. Standing, sitting?
You can, however you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable sitting.
Check. Hi, my name's Bryce DeGarlis. I'm from Kenora. I was born and raised there. Attended school there and immediately hired on the railroad, and I've been at the railroad ever since for CPKC. I'm running for the People's Party of Canada because I've had enough, and I know many of you have too. Enough broken promises, enough soaring costs, and enough being ignored by the same tired parties who only remember us when they need votes. Let's be honest, Ottawa doesn't understand the North, and they sure don't represent it. They pass laws that hurt small towns. They bow to global interests while our communities get left behind. Every time that we speak up, they call it misinformation or hate. Well, guess what? Wanting affordable groceries, decent healthcare, and free from government overreach isn't hate, it's common sense. I'm not here to polish talking points. I'm here to fight for you. To tell Ottawa that we're done being silenced, we're done being taxed to death, and we're done being told how to live our lives by people who've never set foot outside city limits. This campaign is about taking back control of our communities, our freedoms, and our future. It starts right here, right now. Let's stop.
Tanya Cameron, NDP.
Okay, Tanya Cameron, come
My
on.
name is Tanya Cameron. I am from Kenora. My nation is Nisatchewan Anishinaabe Nation, which is about 20 kilometers north of Kenora. I have been in Northwestern Ontario since 1993, and I've grown to love not just my own community, but the greater region. As I go to doorstep, there are some that recognize me as the potato lady. And if you recall, at the start of the pandemic, a lot of us learned that the food network system in Canada is very fragile because a lot of us saw empty shelves in our food stores at the start of the pandemic. I saw a call for a farmer that needed help offloading his potatoes, and I did 1 potato run, and it grew to 6 potato runs with nearly 300,000 pounds of potatoes brought into the region. And that went, nobody made any money. When I reached out to Fresh Market for help, they helped distribute. They didn't make a profit, I didn't do anything. So it was straight from the farmer to tables in Dryden, Kenora, Sioux Lookout, and all, like over 20 First Nations received those potatoes. So that's my name, and that's how I'm recognized when I'm door knocking in the community. I'm also a big proponent of Indigenous sport, and I have been doing running sports teams, basketball, volleyball, soccer, and starting badminton, and taking Indigenous youth from the whole region, not just from Kenora, from the far north, from Sioux Lookout, Fort Francis, Thunder Bay, Mishkegoguming, like all these communities come and I take out kids for sports across the country, and I'm a helper, and that's what I feel my calling has been, like not only my day job and things that I do to grow my family in the community, but also I help. You know, I know that there are different needs, and there are certain, every now and then there's a call to arms, whether it's food security, youth sports, youth mental health, menstrual products for far north communities, even our local jail in Kenora. So I'm an advocate, and I feel fortunate that when people see a need or a gap or a barrier, that they'll reach out to me. And while I can't take on every cause, I certainly try to put my head together and my network of friends from across the region to say, this is what needs to happen, will you help? So this is why I think that my personal values align with the NDP, and I believe I would be that strong voice that will get things done. I've worked in this region for so many years, both professionally and on volunteer time. You wish.
Kelvin Boucher, Chicago, Independent.
Good evening, people. I don't really like doing this. We got such a very small crowd. I've I've been in this boat for a number of years already. I think 2012 was the first time I ran as an independent. The reason why I ran was for a very simple reason. The Anishinaabe people in the northern region, especially those on the streets and the homeless ones, they have been neglected and they've been ignored. Yet they are one of the biggest money funding agencies available. A lot of Shonyas goes to these individual organizations to help these less fortunate people. But yet on a daily basis, we lose at least 1 or 2 people anywhere within the northern region. We have children dying on reservations, committing suicide, these youths, and there's a drug and alcohol problem, but nobody wants to look at it for what it is. They all wants to say, oh, it's all a homeless issue. Well, you become homeless when you don't have, when you're an alcoholic or a drug addict. That's how you become homeless. You don't pay attention to your bills, you don't pay attention to your children or your food. These issues have been going on for quite some time. 90% of all the jobs in the northern region, starting from Timmins, Ontario to here now, are created in that sector, in the homeless issue and the drug and alcohol program. To this date, since I've been in here since, 20 years now, I've been doing this as an advocate for the less fortunate people. And since 1965, which the first issue came about Anishinaabe people, it was called Indians Want a Better Deal. To this day, the Anishinaabe people, the less fortunate people, have not gotten a better deal. Everybody that works for the programs, yes, it is good for them, but the dollar that is being identified by the taxpayer, that they're giving it to the less fortunate, it's not reaching in the less fortunate. And that is what I'm here for, to make that change. And the only way we're going to make that change is going to Ottawa and telling Ottawa what really is going on up north. We Anishinaabe people are not an industry. We are people too, and the less fortunate people are even just as valuable. Thank you.
Eric Malilo, Conservative.
Is this on? Hello? Hello?
It has a lag.
It has a leg? Okay. Let's try it.
Big line.
Okay. We'll try this one. Okay. I'm just gonna start talking like Elvin and we'll see if it works. Can everyone hear me all right? Yeah. All right, let me know if you can. I'm Eric Lolo, your incumbent member of Parliament in Conservative Canada in this upcoming election. It's been my honor to serve our region for the last 6 years, nearly 6 years as a member of Parliament. And I do believe that this election is coming at a pivotal time, as Dick mentioned, in Charles' behalf in the opening remarks. This is a pivotal time with the threat we're facing from President Trump. His tariffs, whether they're coming on or off, the uncertainty that that's causing is putting a lot of the jobs at risk across this country. But we have to also look at not just punching back against Donald Trump, but ensuring that we can strengthen our economy by getting our resources to market, both within Canada by breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, which could boost our economy. I believe there are estimates out there of about 8 percentage points alone just by doing more trade with amongst ourselves. Looking to build critical infrastructure like pipelines, mining development, getting our forest products to markets in Europe and Asia, and countries that are wanting to work with Canada, wanting what we have, and wanting to do trade with us instead of just continuing to do business primarily just with the United States. We need to become more self-reliant and from the United States, ensure our economy is in a stronger position so we can negotiate from a position of strength and not have to rely on that market. We also have to remember myriad of other issues that are facing our communities every day. And obviously Donald Trump is getting all the airtime when you turn on the news, but there still is a lot of people struggling with the cost of living, whether it be at the grocery store, their home heating, you name it, many other essentials. There are also people struggling to find housing, whether it's seniors looking to move into new buildings, whether it's young families, those in vulnerable situations, looking for very basic necessity of shelter, and when we see issues of crime as well across our region, crime that is on the rise right across the country, quite frankly. All very important issues that we have to address. That's why our Conservative plan, beyond just dealing with the threat of Donald Trump and strengthening our economy, is to lower taxes, including by lowering the income tax by 15%, and also looking at building more housing by axing the sales tax, the GST, new homes built to incentivize more development and ensure that those prices can come down when they are being sold. We want to put a cap on government spending through a dollar-for-dollar approach to ensure that we're not adding more fuel to the inflationary fire. I'm almost out of time. I just wanted to quickly thank all of my candidates also for being here as well. Fellow candidates, I respect each and every one of you for stepping up to represent your communities, and I want to thank Ann, Dick, Reese, and everyone who had a hand in helping make this happen here today. Thank you.
John Hobbs, Green Party.
Is that working?
Yes.
Working?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank Sioux Lookout. I spent the afternoon sort of going door to door, and everyone was incredibly friendly and open-minded. So
If you could just follow and not try to join, that'd be really cool.
I'm not going to talk about myself. I may leave that for the closing remarks. You can get my bio there if you want, and you can look it up on the Green Party website. I just want to really spend some time talking about why you should vote Green. As Eric mentioned, it's a difficult time. We're at a pivotal point, and I think we're headed for a minority government, to be honest. But we have, on one hand, we have the Blue Party. Eric, I just met him, but I always give feedback on his questionnaires. He seems like a pretty good guy, a competent politician, but as leader, not so much. I mean, really, Pierre, I'm sure some days he's probably thinking deep in his heart, I wish we had another leader. But, you know, he really, a leadership needs vision, communication, it needs cooperation, it means working with people. We have look at all the premiers, a real myriad of that. We have 2 NDP premiers in the West, 2 Liberal premiers in the Atlantic Canada. We have Francois Legault and Doug Ford. Now what's that? They don't even speak. They're in the same party. He's spoken once with Doug Ford, and Doug Ford is being a leader as far as Trump and terraforms are concerned. And they don't get along. There's something wrong there. So I just don't think he's the guy to pull this country together. And then, we don't have a Liberal guy here, but we have a pretty competent leader. He seems to be brilliant. He's a well-known economist. He can talk to Trump. He can pull things together. But he's got, I hate to say it, a tired old party. They've been around too long, and they feel entitled. So we're in a dilemma, to be honest. So I do think we're headed for a minority government. And so what I really want you to do, and what the Green Party's goal is to be number 3. And they hold the balance of power, because no one thinks about the environment anymore. There was a letter that all the mayors and municipalities sent to the leaders. They're not talking about their issues, which are green issues. The environment, climate change, energy corridors, all sorts of things that are just not being talked about. I guess Trump's getting all of the media or whatever. But don't forget, we have two crises here. We have Trump and we have the environment. Trump's going to be gone in 4 years, hopefully, but the environmental issues are going to continue and just get worse. So please vote Green.
One is a and it's not signed. So it's okay. You can
Okay, I appreciate the there are a number of things I was proud to stand with Lac Seul First Nation to help work with the government to ensure that they could have a new opening of a water treatment plant not too long ago, working with Mishki-Gogaming First Nation, fighting for their proposed treatment center to continue moving through the next stages of government. That's still something that's moving a little bit too slowly at this point, but something that has been moving forward nonetheless. I've made it a top priority of me after I was elected. In fact, my very first intervention in the House of Commons was to raise the concern of the mercury contamination in Grassy Narrows First Nation, and again, we have seen some positive steps in that respect as well. I don't say this, I'm trying to respond to the question, but I don't say this to take credit for any of this progress on my own. That is something that was an incredible work of cross-partisan work with then Chief Rudy Turtle, myself, working with the local government, where we all had agreement on where we needed to move forward, and we were able to make some progress happen. Again, still not, in my opinion, as quickly as we would like, but nonetheless seeing that progress and that next step come forward. So, but beyond some of those specifics, of course, in the role as a member of Parliament, it's not an executive role, but it is an advocacy role, and I've been very proud in opposition in Parliament to be able to continually fight for issues impacting Northwestern Ontario, whether it's our infrastructure improvements, the cost of living, any of our unique challenges. And unfortunately, in my opinion, the government hasn't been able to, the current Liberal government hasn't been able to do enough to meet those needs, but I'm going to continue to fight whether re-elected in government or in opposition. Thank you.
Kelvin and then Tanya.
It's okay, you can go ahead.
Kelvin, please.
You want me to go first? All right. Well, we all know Eric's been elected for the last 4 years, so that is his job to do what he just said, basically, to help the First Nations or Black Sioux and so forth. That is his job to do. He just didn't sit on his butt, which is very good. Now, my position is, I don't have a position, I'm not an elected official, but what I've done within the last 20 years, I basically have taken 12 street people that have complications on the street, that have overdose. Last night I left Kenora, there was two of them, two young ladies that I am aware of, that I know that were also my friends. They had an overdose problem, just right in front of our vehicle. We called Bear Clan, and we also called the police, and they all showed up like within 20 minutes, and these people were taken to the hospital. And altogether it took like about half an hour. There was 6 police cruisers. This is all in Kenora. And this is basically what's been going on. This is only just for 1 month only, like that's over 12 people. And this is what I've been trying to get at. Where is our service providers? They're not around when these people need them. But when they want more money, these agencies, when they want more money, that's when those numbers count. And I think that's wrong. They have enough money as it is already. 90% of all the money I've calculated are going strictly to administration and honorariums and premiums and travel. Nothing is reaching these people that are in need. Yes, they are creating a lot of jobs, but also there needs to be a little bit more compassion for these people. Not just they're more than money makers for the people that have the jobs. They really need help badly. And the way they need the help in these people is by understanding them and being part of that, seeing the problem firsthand. I guess that's it. I'm out of time, right? Or do I got another 5 minutes?
Thank you very much. And Tanya's next.
So I myself am a mover and a shaker, and I've been fortunate enough for people to call on me when they see any kind of social injustice within the community, whether it's, again, food insecurity. I do want to talk about there's 38 First Nations in this riding, which is, we're down 4 because of the electoral boundary changes. But of the 38 First Nations, I'm always very proud to say that if you look at the numbers, and I'm all about the numbers, predominantly support the NDP. But I do want to talk about First Nations Rock the Vote in 2015 that saw historic on-reserve voter turnout across Canada. I'm talking about we surpassed 60%, and that's never been something that happened in the community. And I'll tell you, that happened. I had a day job. I was doing that kind of work on my own time, on my own dime in the evenings. And when those numbers started coming out in 2015, there were ballot shortages across the country on reserve. And the 14 across the country, 4 in this riding alone. So at that time, it was a conservative government at that time that put barriers to identification and barriers to First Nations, the unhoused, rural, remote people's ability to vote. So they deemed it the Fair Elections Act, but I called it the Unfair Elections Act. But the people turned up in droves to vote. And of those votes across the country, the First Nations vote, the Elections Canada tracks this, the majority went to the NDP. I'll just say that. And I was born and raised to know that that's the party that my dad would say, the NDP is the party for the little guy, and we're the little guy. So there's so many initiatives. I've closed the unhoused and raised sportswear for Indigenous youth. I've crowdfunded for menstrual products for northern remote communities. Miigwech.
John Hobbs.
Yes, I think this is sort of slipped from the original question, what you personally did, into politics. But I'm going to take advantage since I'm allowed to have time. I think too many people, and some people in this room perhaps, I don't know, are career politicians. And I think we need an Ottawa more than just that. We need people with real life experience. My whole life has been really in the private sector except for 1 year. I have had my own firm. I've worked hard. I know it's what it's like to meet a payroll, to try and struggle during recessions and keep a business afloat. And there's value to that. That's all.
Okay, our next question is coming up. Sioux Lookout has many persons working here on immigration visas. They're fitting well into our community and filling a great need. A recent survey indicated that a high percentage, up to 80%, may have to leave because of new laws. What will you do to advocate for this area with respect to unfair immigration laws? And the first person I would call is Kelvin.
Immigration laws. Well, that's a new one. I have no complications in people coming into this country. I've never have, otherwise none of you would be here. But my point is, that's a joke, you guys, but don't get offended. Immigration just, they've come from the other side of the world to come here to work because either they're cheaper employment or they're willing to work. I don't believe that's the answer to our situation. Like what Tanya says, we have over 30 First Nations up north here, and there's others across the country. There's over 600 First Nations. We have youths in those First Nations that are isolated. Why can't we access those youth to come to the communities like here? If we can bring them from the other side of the world, we can bring them from up north to come to these communities like here in Sioux Lookout. Train them how to work. I mean, anybody can train somebody how to pour coffee. It's not complicated. The only difference with those Anishinaabe people, the youths up north, is they don't get to go home. It reminds them the IRS. It reminds the Anishinaabe people of all things when you can't go home. But if you bring those Anishinaabe children or the youth from up north to come here into this community and pour coffee, learn how to pour coffee and educate them and send them back home, that's the ticket. You will have an economy reboom again. And the immigrants, I'm not saying we send them back, but we utilize them too. And they also learn how to get to speak proper English. I don't understand half of them. When I speak Anishinaabe to them, they don't understand me and they get upset with me. And that's my home language. But yet, it's not. I say we utilize our people. People should be, especially here. This could be like a training hub for everybody. And industry.
Tanya.
So I've been fortunate to travel northern communities. I see the families in a safe place, to social issues that we have in our communities, is a place that they want to call home. We're talking about people that come very often and life here. I've been out to work with some volunteers that not be able to vote in this election, but they're just very happy to be in a community. They can raise their families, they can work and not just pouring coffee. They're willing to work in communities, and they're welcome, and they're fortunate to have been raised. I was raised in Winnipeg, so it was a very, very multicultural. I'm still friends with a lot of friends here, and they're Ireland, Croatia, Chile, Portugal, and appreciate that. And come to Northwestern, but now coming into our communities and they're participating, they're getting involved. So I welcome that. Different approaches to the economy. I'll be welcoming.
Hi, so I have different incredibly high numbers of I think that we're low rate, and we have workers are also consumers in our healthcare. So what's happening? Infrastructure, so we're having social justice. So I stand on the moratorium, be able to catch up, and with like we used to have with liberal. Thank you.
There's veterans who's that there's certainly and it's not now all but I do think mismanaged because for taxes. I do have to come to grips with that. But there are two things we also have to look at. We are short of instruction workers, those coming in for housing, and an incredible for years we've had the brain drain to the U.S. Researchers, lots of MDs, lots of people who have been laid off, and to north. We should stream them. People do professionals. In the country, and it will help us grow.
Very important question for me. As we manage the immigration system, I remember the immigrants coming in that were not properly placed in terms of their job, right geographic locations. It's not proper. Where they live, why? Perhaps finding themselves in very vulnerable situations. We see that they're hitting every single the exact same as the question. Dick, first here, they're feeling right across the the applications coming in look, but it's not economic. Many of the companies at home, they have family here, friends here. what I will do with what I have done. I did serve action for, and that our program, which only I spent on to Northwestern able to do that, and now the place and Northwestern that'd be my priority.
The next comes from Michael. The candidate explained the rationale and made nuclear waste 2,650 kilometers across Canada by trucks into Northwestern Ontario at the proposed deep geological nuclear waste repository at the Rivel Lake site that's within 35 to 70 kilometers of all the communities in Northwestern Ontario. So the first person, John.
Well, there's various positions on this, but the Green Party's policy is democratic. It, as far as I know, it's been approved by the Council of Ignis and the First Nations councils, First Nation bands. So we would go with their local democratic decision.
Kelvin.
Nuclear waste, going up north of Ignis. Lac First Nation is right at the border of the high water mark. We provide all the water from everybody downstream from us, like Kenora, Lake of the Woods, and the English River system, and so forth. When time comes, if I'm elected, first thing I would say is, in 1975, there was a moratorium that was passed by the chiefs in Kenora. I do believe there was about 12 bands that were put together that passed that moratorium for Treaty 3. The moratorium had stated clearly that lines be drawn up for wild rice. Each band had their own sectors of where to pick wild rice, and you could not go onto that side or to this side. Okay, so the bands got together and they finally agreed, and they got M&R to to enforce that law. Like, I can't go picking my wild rice anywhere I want unless I have the authorization from that particular band. That was done, you know, with the First Nation people. Now here we were dealing with this nuclear waste. One band said yes. There was no vote, there was no nothing. So why can't we use that moratorium the way it was obtained, doing the same thing with this one band, and say no. There's 27 of us in this Treaty 3 territory, and you do not carry the voice for all of us. Let's have a vote on it. And it would acquire the same results as it acquired as the moratorium of the wild rice was divided up in pieces. And Wabigoon First Nation has one of the biggest wild rice fields. I can't go pick their rice field. Why should they bring the authorization of bringing a poisonous thing to my area, and I don't have a say in the matter? Treaty 3 needs to step up. The Grand Chief of Treaty 3 needs to step up and say no. The people and the people of Treaty 3 need to vote on this, not one band. I say no to nuclear waste.
Tanya.
So I've been considering this for over 20 years when it was first talked about transportation of nuclear waste to throughout the country, and seeing the development in terms of when WN management, nuclear waste management, that they were talking to Ear Falls and Ignace and seeing how that develops, and that is in the Treaty 3 territory. So as Anishinaabe, I'm always considering that, and certainly I understand, you know, Chief Whitlam, they had a big decision in front of them, and they've had years of consultation in their community, as with Ignace. And as I go door knocking in Ignace, I can almost feel that that's the driving issue in that community. And to hear both sides, you know, like the pros and cons, it's really, it's really, I feel the passion from the people in terms of those that support because of the economic development, those that are worried about the toxic and the nuclear disaster that is here. So I am, you know, I do support the community's right to decide, but I also understand that it has a greater impact in the whole region. So I will let democracy prevail in that front, but certainly if I'm elected, I do want to be very active on that file and consider, you know, what is the lasting impact that will have in terms of are we safe and continue that engagement process. Gretch? Battery dead.
Bryce.
Hi, so this was just brought to my attention just before the debate, as I've been a politician for about a week and a half now. The PPC platform that I like, and that's the reason that I'm running, is basically small government getting out of the way, and the people of Ignace, and I'm assuming the Indigenous groups are in the area were, I hope, were consulted. That's what one would hope. And I guess I am a little bit concerned about that trickling into the water, but I didn't have a whole lot of, I didn't know about it. So I will be looking into this issue anyways. Thank you.
Eric?
Thank you. It's been a while now, but if I remember correctly, the question was, what's the logic behind this? And I would say from the high level, from the federal government standpoint, we have very ambitious climate change reduction goals as a government that the Parliament has approved. And I truly don't believe that there is any path forward to reaching those without nuclear as part of that equation. So that is, I suppose, to answer the direct question, that the logic of how we've got here in this process, similar to what others have said. I live in Kenora. I also didn't vote in this, but I respect the vote from Ignace and the decision from Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation as well to move forward to the next step in the process. Again, as I understand, this is not a final decision by any means. My understanding is that this is just moving forward to the next step at this point. So I'll continue to be engaged with those communities and with folks from across the region. But again, I guess to answer more directly, we'll respect the decision of Ignace and Wabigoon Lake.
Okay, the next question is directed to Eric. Explain to the people what it's like for you and your family and Poilievre's family to drink fresh water. Why have you and Poilievre not signed Bill C-61, which all treaty people get fresh drinking water? Patty Haidu from the Liberal Party called you out on this and no response. These are people in your writing. Could you explain? And this comes from Brian Polak.
Okay, thank you very much. Bill C-61 is a very important piece of legislation that I had the privilege to work on at the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee. I worked very hard with members of all parties to improve that legislation. So Patty Haidu, she's very great at playing politics, but she brought forward a piece of legislation that many First Nations felt did not address the issues. Many First Nations did not feel they were consulted. We heard it time and time again at the committee. If you don't believe me, you can go back and listen to the committee recordings. Every single day we heard people from across the country, chiefs and other leaders come forward saying that they did not feel that this bill was ready to be approved. So we worked tirelessly. We had meetings that went from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and the pizza break and coffee breaks, trying to get the bill to a place where it would be broadly accepted and would be able to be implemented. Unfortunately, we ran out of runway. Of course, the government prorogued Parliament. We hadn't sat at all this calendar year, and have now called election. So that the bill died without that ability for us to get it across the finish line. So I worked very hard on that. I even moved an amendment to the bill that recognized clean drinking water as a human right. Unfortunately, the amendment died with the bill, and yet here we are. So I take great issue with the way Patty Haidu has chosen to politicize this issue, and it's been her government that has been dragging its feet on this issue for many years. Thank you.
Would anyone else want to comment on Bill C-61? Kelvin?
As I said, Lac des Mille First Nation is the highest watershed of all. It all flows into the Hudson Bay, and we go past the Lake of the Woods and the English River system. My point is, I am 202. I went home to Lac des Mille First Nation. Nobody lived on the reservation. I built my own house in the middle of nowhere. And basically, since then, in 2009, Chief and Council built a little bit of things here and there. But me and my dog, my 12-year-old daughter, we've been drinking right from Lac des Mille itself. We don't have no fancy running water. We have no hydro. We don't have all these fancy things. We live right off the grid completely. We're okay, I think we are. And so this Bill Bill C-61, it doesn't affect me. I'll tell you that right now. It affects everybody downriver. And if we allow this nuclear thing to happen, it's going to affect a lot more, and it's also going to affect me. Thank you.
I see no more. Our next question, CBC Radio Canada, fund or defund? First person, Kelvin.
Wow. I seen you picking up that same letter twice already in a row. You gotta mix them up. CBC Radio and the media. For the last 20 years, I've been involved in a number of issues pertaining to the less fortunate people. And we've invited chiefs, we invited politicians to hire up the politicians to our gatherings to try to make enough noise to let them know that we have some issues. And they've never showed up. Excuse me, what was the question again?
CBC Radio.
Yeah, okay, CBC Radio. And the local media in Kenora and around the areas, and even APTN. We've invited them. These are all people that are funded by the government, and CBC is the same thing. We phoned CBC Radio in Thunder Bay to come and do a story on us. And phoned CBC Radio in Thunder Bay to come and do a story on us. And phoned CBC Radio in Thunder Bay to come and do a story on us in regards to what's happening to people at the bottom of the chain. They've never showed up. We invited chiefs. To me, was the media. The truth that was fortunate are worth more than as job creators.
John.
I never, but once you put your name forward, you get one. And the most I get are by far supporters of CBC. And I'll be honest, I do like CBC. It's probably the only radio station in Sioux Narrows where I live. I don't think there's any other. And I do support it. I'm not in favor of all of their programming, but it's the one thing that does bring the country together. And some of the people telling me that 70% of conservatives support it. So I would like to hear from Eric why the Conservative government is not supporting CBC.
Bryce?
So, in my personal opinion, I think that we should defund the CBC. If it was creating a good market, it wouldn't need subsidies, would it? If it was creating a good product. They've turned into a propaganda arm of the government, and they create narratives over telling the story most of the time. They get massive subsidies from the taxpayer, and then what do? They lay off employees. I don't think it's right.
Eric?
Okay, John gets his wish. I get to comment to this. So, perhaps to your point somewhat, I do also watch CBC. Big breaking news, surprise everyone. I do watch CBC myself. But we've been very clear. If we do form a Conservative majority government, we will defund CBC. We believe that it can survive on its own, and I would actually argue I think it could do much better on its own without the government's tentacles in there. So that's where we stand on that.
Tanya?
So the NDP, we will continue supporting the CBC. I remember when I was in grade 5 on a field trip and as kids were talking to our teacher and we're talking about maturity, like maturity, like how do you, and then one of the kids asked the teacher, how do you know that you're an adult? Like how will we know? And the teacher sat there for a second, then he's like, when you start listening to CBC radio, then you're an adult. So that always stuck with me, and I always enjoyed it. My parents have always been, growing up, they would sit around the kitchen table with the newspapers, and so we always discuss current events. So later on as an adult, I'll start tuning into CBC radio on my drive. I work in Kenora, and I go to surrounding communities, and that's just the thing that I do. And just the other day, I was in Eagle Lake First Nation, and I stopped at a senior's place, and his friends were checking up on him. And Mr. David Kelly, he said, do you support the CBC? And that's the only time I've ever heard this on the campaign trail. And I was like, well, yeah, I do support it. I grew up in a low-income inner-city home in Winnipeg. And if we didn't have that CBC channel, then we wouldn't have been able to watch TV. And he said, that's exactly it, he said. And he says, as seniors, we can't afford all these TV packages. As seniors, we don't know how to download the apps to watch whatever program, he said. So he said, but it's CBC that we'll be watching. So I really appreciated to hear that and hear his perspective in terms of they don't have the income to buy these programs and apps and all these shows. And certainly I would want to protect, the party wants to protect the CBC. And it's funny when they talk about the propaganda or things that only one issue is said. Safe drinking water on reserve is pushed on CBC. You know, addressing some of the barriers for people to vote is addressed on CBC. See, if you're not the group that's impacted by government policies, it's really not going to affect you, but it'll affect me. My community would still be without safe drinking water if it weren't for media outlets speaking up and shining a light on issues in our communities. And that's where I stand. Thank you.
Okay, this one I'm not sure what to do with. I'm going to throw it out. Anybody who wants to speak to it may. It's from Carl Friesen, and it's addressed to Charles Fox. Okay, so if you have comments, if you don't have comments, that's fine. Clarify Mark Carney's position with the World Economic Forum. So if you have thoughts on it, catch my attention here. Bryce first, then John.
Well, as far as I know, Mark Carney, he's been a central banker. I believe he ruined the bank, the finances in England before he came over to Canada. He takes credit for getting us through the 2008 financial crisis, and I think that was just good stewardship and good financing by, I hate to say it, but the Conservative government. He does have heavy ties to the World Economic Forum, and I believe that net zero is kind of like his brainchild. And I think that that's a difficult thing to wrap your head around if you like to be able to drive your car and heat your home. That's all.
John?
I have no idea the connection of Mark Carney to the World Economic Forum, but it's just a conference. People blow it totally out of proportion. It's a conference where people share ideas on the economy and whatnot. And yes, Mark Carney did create financial systems for promoting net zero, but I live in a net zero home. I drive a car and I heat my home without any problem.
Okay, our next question, what will the newly elected government provide for the working class, retiring and retired population with regard to supportive programs? And the first person, Eric.
Thank you for the question. I think there's, like I mentioned off the top, obviously Donald Trump getting a lot of the media attention in this issue, but we can't forget the very real day-to-day issues that people are facing. So I really appreciate this question. As I was mentioning in my opening remarks, and I sort of ran out of time, our party is committed to lowering taxes for both working population as well as the taxes that seniors pay. The question mentioned seniors specifically. We are also going to increase to $34,000 the amount that seniors can work without having to pay income tax if they do choose to work or it becomes necessary for seniors to work. And we're also going to add 2 extra years to the time that seniors can keep their RRSP in a program, in the investment, if they're able to and if they choose to have that investment grow a little longer, and above all else, ensuring that the retirement age remains at 65 to protect CPP, OAS, and other programs. So, but back away from just seniors, because the question also mentioned working population. So I mentioned the income tax cut of 15% to help put more money back in people's pockets. We're also going to put a cap on government spending through a dollar-for-dollar approach to ensure that the inflationary spending that's been driving up the cost of living, adding more to groceries, to gas, everything is put to an end, and to ensure that that budget deficit doesn't grow, continue to grow out of proportion to the point that it starts to squeeze out public services, and that is my big fear. People often think conservatives want a balanced budget as a means to an end, but that's very incorrect. The balanced budget is a means to providing more critical services for future generations. If we're paying everything and servicing our debt, we don't have enough money available for those critical services. Thank you.
Kelvin.
Uh, 65, I do believe, is retiring age for retirement. I don't believe in that. I believe the elderly people, in fact, I encourage all the elders to keep working until you have dropped dead. For a very simple reason. My mother was in the elders home, half of my family was in the elders, the seniors I've seen in the old folks home. It's a horrible place. You don't know who you are half of the time, and you lose half of your money when you go in there. You don't even know you have money. You don't have access to your money. Somebody else looks after your money for you. I felt so sorry for my mother when she was in there. A woman that worked, she died at 82, but all her life she worked. She worked all her life in various places, and then to be put in a home, it was just horrible watching her. She couldn't do nothing. She couldn't work. She was told, they brought her food. Her granddaughter had to feed her. It is one of the worst places you can be. It's worse than prison for the old people. I hate saying it, but my recommendation to the old people is work as long as you can. I don't care if you drop dead, break down your job site, because that'll be far less painful than being in those homes. It is very horrible. Thank you.
Bryce.
Follow that up. I think that affordability starts with our budget. The PPC would want to balance the budget in year one, and then after that start lowering taxes, and then lowering corporate taxes. I think that protects the pensioner's dollar, as well as puts more pockets in the working class people. Dollars in their pockets, sorry. It's my first engagement public speaking. So yeah, I just think good economic policy will protect pensions. Thanks.
Tanya.
So I'm gonna say, my regular day job, I am the CEO of Wigwa's Elder and Senior Care Home in Kenora. Three years ago, the First Nations around Kenora, the Kenora Chiefs, bought the Birchwood Long-Term Care Home. And I'm proud of the fact that we've turned that home around, where it's a choice now that seniors in the region are wishing to go there. And just the care that goes into caring for someone's loved one is very important. Whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, we truly want to make it a home for communities. That's my regular day job. On the other hand, I always encourage people to stay home, stay in their homes as long as possible, and in order to do that, we've got to be able to have the investments to make affordable housing, investments into senior care. When I was in Ignace, I learned that over 60% of the population are seniors, and they struggle for healthcare practitioners. They struggle, they work hard towards making sure that there's that social connections in the community, because it's very important for mental health. These investments are so important, and we've got to remember, Poilievre was in cabinet when they voted to move old age security up to 67. And that's so unfair. You think there's a whole segment of people that have helped build this country. that they do not have time to enjoy, you know, a good time at home, being in their own space with their children, with their grandchildren, and just enjoying that time and not working yourself to death. You know, there's got to be some dignity that every Canadian should have in their life. And certainly the NDP will put the investments in senior care. And I really am moved to be able to work with families, to work with seniors, to hear from the healthcare professionals that say there's such a difference in this home. So I'm always very proud of that.
John?
I'm probably the only, I can't say pensioner because I don't have a pension, but I'm probably the only retired senior here. And it's 3 points I want to make. One, I always had to pay for my dental expenses out of pocket, but the minute they brought in the dental care, I finally, at the very end of my life probably, got dental care covered. So I would hate to see that cut. The other thing is we're talking about expenses or tax cuts and making it more affordable for people. The Green Party has the biggest tax cut of all, but probably no one's heard of it yet. Anyone making $40,000 or under pays no income tax. Simple to administer, easy to do, and it affects the people who really need tax breaks. Have I missed a point? Probably, but I'm doing this.
The next question is, how will you ensure affordability for our younger generation who can't afford a mortgage because of the cost of housing and interest rates? And the first person, John.
I've got a whole list here. My background, by the way, is an architect, and I have done many, many housing projects over my career. So the first thing is we have to increase supply, period. It's a basic economic thing, way more supply. It needs to be a multi-pronged approach. We gotta try a whole lot of things to get more houses out there. And the other thing that we have to do, and I'm not a big one with increased bureaucracy or government, but we have to build a crown corporation that will be a developer for housing. It'll do two things, develop housing and help all different types of owners with all the pre-designed things, ownership, incorporation, whatever. They may be young developers, they may be not-for-profits, they may be municipalities or co-ops. I did 2 huge co-op projects and you don't hear about them anymore. I don't know where they've gone, but I do know that we used to have this. There used to be an Ontario Housing Corporation. I worked for it when I was a university student. It did rental properties geared to income and Indigenous housing. But Mike Harris cut that. So and that's part of the problem. It's not just the Liberals. It started that long ago, and we've just been sliding backwards. So we really have to treat this as a crisis. We need to keep the accelerator fund. I know the Conservatives have criticized the Liberals for it. I don't know why. We have to work with municipalities for a whole lot of things, such as speeding up permit review for affordable and rental housing. Perhaps the feds even pay for the permits. There's a lot of empty office buildings now because of COVID and work from home and all of that. Those could be converted into, they could be converted into houses. I could go on and on. I've got lots of ideas like this.
Bryce.
Okay. So I believe it all starts with the economy. Kids are going to have a really hard time entering the housing market right now because inflation is rampant. So I think that we have to obviously balance the budget first off, reduce taxes, reduce corporate taxes. We need to cut the bureaucracy. There's too much red tape in between. I think we need to reduce demand, so lowering immigration numbers or having a moratorium for a few years until our infrastructure can catch up. We can't keep adding people while trying to keep up with supply. It's not going to work. And that's where I stand on that. Thank you.
Eric.
Thank you. Very important question. So many people that I talk to that are about my age, frankly, are struggling to find a place to live. They want to get married or start families in some cases, but don't feel that they're in a position to because they're still living with their parents perhaps, or living in a rental that is not quite suitable for what they're looking for. So this is a very important issue. As I mentioned off the top in my opening remarks, at least I should have, a Conservative government will remove the GST on new homes built, so that that will bring the cost down perhaps as much as $50,000 over the course of the mortgage payment. I will also aim to incentivize more of that housing development from the builder's perspective. We also need to look at the interest rates. Of course, that is from the monetary side, but the government, through a cap on government spending, can help lower inflation and help lower the interest rates as a result of that. A Conservative government, if elected, would also tie the infrastructure housing funds that a municipality gets to whether or not the municipalities are allowing housing developments to be built. Those that are approving permits quickly, that are freeing up land, they will get a boost. Those like Sioux Lookout, for example, actually will get a boost in housing dollars. Other municipalities that are doing what they can to block development for whatever reasons, we'll see a reduction. And we will also repurpose the Housing Accelerator Fund, as John mentioned, which doesn't build any homes by the Liberals' own admission. I'll try not to pick on them too much because Charles isn't here, but by their own admission, the Housing Accelerator Fund does not actually build specific homes. And we will repurpose those funds directly to the municipalities so that it can build specific homes. Further than that, I think longer term, we need to incentivize more people to enter the trades so that there are more people to build on any, to bid rather on any specific project. And we want to do that by boosting the apprenticeship grants and allowing more write-offs for traveling tradespeople. Thank you.
Kelvin.
Horse and buggy syndrome. That's how I look at it as. First of all, if you don't have no jobs, right? And there's no jobs available, there's no industry. And we have, you have no shonya. And if you have no shonya, you can't buy a house. It's simple logic. So the object is to try to create jobs for the youth, for people, for anybody basically, so they can afford a house. Right now, we're all relying on social programs in this northern region. 90% of the jobs are for social programs. We're not all going to qualify for government jobs to buy a house, right, Eric? You just bought a house. Unless I get elected, I'll buy a house too. Thank you.
Tanya.
So I have 3 young adult children. They're 22, 23, and 24. My youngest, 22, fortunate enough, we had a settlement in my First Nation, and he got a mortgage for a condo. He goes to university in Winnipeg. But that was just like a really, really good blessing for him to do that, and for him to recognize I'm gotta be a home buyer first. My other 2 are working but still living at home because the cost of rent in Kenora is just so crazy. You'd be essentially working just to pay this rent, and I'm fortunate enough where I own my own home, and that comes through a lot of work over my career. And so I recognize that it's important. Not everyone's been fortunate enough to have their own home, and my party would look at supporting first-time home buyers, which, you know, my daughter is already talking. She's 23. She's talking about buying her own home, but just looking at how out of grasp that is for her and how she feels. Her partner, he's an apprentice electrician, and while he's got so much work and it's a good income, they're still struggling and trying to form a plan on how are they going to be able to combine their incomes and buy an affordable home in Kenora. And that's a real struggle. You know, we need these jobs in our communities where our young adult children can grow families and get that mortgage and stay in the community. Battery's out again. But certainly I think my party will make those investments into first-time home buyers. We do recognize the need to build homes in all our communities and remote communities as well, and that's where we would invest our dollars.
How will Northwestern Ontario be represented in Ottawa with respect to these three things? Limited and expensive connectivity, lack of public transportation across the country, and high gas prices. Eric?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, how will Northwestern Ontario be represented in Ottawa with respect to those three things?
Appreciate the question. So obviously those are two very important issues. Three things that I have frankly made a priority to advocate for. The high cost of living in Northern Ontario is something that is not unique, not new to us. It's something that we've sort of come to expect, but it's definitely not something that we should accept. And I have raised the issue of high cost of gas, groceries, and other essentials many times throughout my years in Parliament, and that's something I'll certainly continue to do, as I say, whether in government or in opposition. In government, of course, I can tell you if the Conservatives do form the government, we will remove things like the carbon tax, which is temporarily zero from the consumer side, but we will completely remove it, as well as the industrial side, to help bring down the cost of living for goods across Northwestern Ontario. And I'm sorry, I forgot the transportation and
high gas prices, lack of public transportation across the country, and expensive connectivity.
Thank you. Connectivity is another very big issue. One of the first things that I did when I was elected was bring a petition forward highlighting how that lack of connectivity in Northwestern Ontario. I also worked very hard individually with another colleague of mine to push the government towards allowing some innovative pilot projects to bring connectivity to Northwestern Ontario, specifically in some remote flying First Nation communities. That's something I'm very personally proud of, and probably should have mentioned in that previous question that was posed. And on the transportation side, obviously, there's much to be done. We want to look at continuing to twin the Trans-Canada Highway, the great work that has been done from the Manitoba border for a few kilometers by the province. The federal government has not done anything to lift a finger on that. That has to change.
Connectivity and public provincial responsibility, and I'm not sure that I should get involved in public in Northwestern Ontario. It's something with the provincial government to spend. Is probably the board striking down the deal with must. Government should look at doing this to have low orbit satellites to connect the but as far as gas is concerned, obviously, I state through my GSA and maybe I need buying. But really is if it's absolutely empty, but mostly it's less than that because I charge it at home. So that is the way to go to be green.
Tanya.
Public transportation, I know just in the municipalities, say in Kenora, we've now gone to, we just had to retire the bus. But we do have like small cars. This municipality had done some investments in that. Certainly the federal government needs to ensure that municipalities have the funding to do the investments in public transportation. A lot of people I know in my town, when the bus is out, We're talking about so many people that rely on it to get to work, to get their appointments and whatnot, so certainly investment in that area is needed. Connectivity, my leader, Jagmeet Singh, had recently wrote a letter to the Prime Minister asking the government to intervene in the sale of 49.9 shares of Rogers in terms of keeping Canadian connectivity, keeping the Canadian company Canadian, and not having any implication in terms of US interference in our communications in Canada. Affordability, yeah. It's hard to, like, I know in the bigger cities it's easy to say we need investments in the transit, but I'm thinking of locally here in this town where it's a struggle to get from one end to the other, and unless you're prepared to walk, that's certainly the only option a lot of people have in this community. So the party does support public transportation. Thank you.
Kelvin.
Everybody looks like falling asleep. Well, just liven it up a bit. First of all, I would lend everybody that wants to save 5%, I would lend you my status card. It's very simple. We all need to be treated equally. Like, for instance, you take Dryden and Kenora, like there's a 25-cent difference in some areas for gas. And then you take Dryden and here, what is it, about 30-cent difference in gas? We all need to be, it all comes from the same place, and we're all within the same area, within a few kilometers from the, half an hour to an hour. So we need to be all to be treated equal. And I think that's the ticket there, being treated equal. If Kenora is going to get the same price as Dryden, then Sioux Lookout should be the same. Unless you're living way up north, like the fly-in communities, they have to have diesel flowing into them, and then that becomes a different issue. But then again, they have status cards. We don't. No, you don't. I'm sorry about that.
Bryce.
Hi, so connectivity, I'm assuming that we're talking about broadband internet, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, so I think that we should just seek out something like Starlink. I think that that's a reasonable solution, and it obviously works very well, and he's got it all over the world. I'm not sure why we wouldn't use that. And as far as gas prices go, obviously getting rid of the carbon tax has shown not to reduce any emissions at all, but just make us poorer. And lack of transportation, I really don't have, I haven't put much insight into that. I didn't realize that was in our jurisdiction, but I would definitely be looking into that and looking if there's any ways the federal government could help.
Okay, this question is directed to Eric on the recent meeting where regarding their DGR Biden. You were asked to from it because North NW should vote referendum should have did not bring up on the floor. Explain why we cannot have a vote. And I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. That meeting, I'll back. Sounds like Ryan sure does. Go back to your answer to the question. I was in a similar concern that said to UNO and that.
Level of error and in fact, first she doesn't speak for the rest of the I hate bringing up the issue, but it's reality, and that's what we all just won't have one band should have everybody else.
Strategic is not working anymore. What are your opinions on first past the post system? And if you could change the way we vote, which system would you use? And first person, John.
Well, there are problems with first past. The way back there. That's really.
A question, you'll have to repeat that again.
The question basically is, right now our voting system is first past the post. And if you could change that, what would you change it to?
Well, first of all, if I could change it, it would require all you people to vote for me so I can go to Ottawa to make that change. So, that's what I would have to say. If I'm gonna make any changes, I would have to go to Ottawa to make that change. Thank you.
Bryce.
Same as Calvin. So I think it makes it extremely hard for grassroots movements like the PPC. We got 5% of the national vote in the last election, and we have no representation at all. So that's a big chunk of the Canadian population that has no representation in Ottawa. So I would prefer if we could vote for a leader as well as a candidate.
Tanya.
So the NDP supports electoral reform. We need proportional representation, especially when you look in this community, how diverse and how remote this riding is, how huge this riding. It goes down to Nestor Falls and Nijmegen, all the way up to Fort Severn, the Manitoba border, all the way to Ignace. I'm at almost 4,000 kilometers just going to each of the communities, and I still have more communities to visit over the next 2 weeks. Certainly, I see communities only able to, I'm just thinking of an example. I was in Sioux Narrows, and these are close numbers, I just can't remember off the top of my head. I believe the Blue Party got 59 votes, the Liberal had 27, and the NDP had 29. So that the Blue was able to win that town because there's some people that are Liberal and some people that are NDP, and they sort of cancel each other out. So their voices aren't exactly heard in terms of the issues that they hold dear to their heart. So that's why the party believes in electoral reform. That's why I believe in electoral reform. We have 38 First Nations where not all the time our voices are heard by either the Blue Party or the Red Party. It's just not heard. We're really used to getting that lip service and that promise, but truly our needs aren't represented in Ottawa. So I want to be that voice that will stand up for our municipalities, but also stand up for the First Nations and bring that perspective to Ottawa.
Thank you. Appreciate the question. If I'm not mistaken, it was Prime Minister Jean Chrétien who said democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. And I think that's words I remember every once in a while when I flip through his book I have on my bookshelf. And I just want to, before I get to the substance of the question, I just want to